Welcome to Closets Las Vegas, the city's premier custom closet and storage company. We provide complete storage solutions for all price ranges and projects, backed by our 20 years of experience. Whether it's a closet, pantry, garage storage, floor coatings, entertainment center, laundry room, home office, custom bookcases, and window coverings, Closets Las Vegas will give you the look and feel you want in your home. Please contact me, Pat, for your free consultation, and don't forget to ask about 0% financing for 18 months. I look forward to working with you.
Attention contractors, remodelers, and homeowners. Is your renovation becoming a pain in the glass? Here at Glass Vegas, we take care of all of your glass needs, from a broken window to custom shower doors, mirrors, winding closures, storefronts, railings, and much more. We can even help you with new or replacement thermally broken windows. We're a full-service, woman-owned glass company that provides unparalleled workmanship, excellent communication, and great customer service. Glass Vegas, we do glass with class.
Is your credit score holding you back from purchasing a home? GC Credit Coaches is a repair company that's made easy. Their goal is to challenge and remove all negative errors that hurt your credit score. On average, GC clients see about 10.2 negative items removed over 4 months. Start improving your credit score today with a simple 2-minute online enrollment for a free consultation and a complete credit audit. GC Credit Coaches offers competitive monthly pricing, no contracts, no hidden fees, and the service stops once you are satisfied. GC Credit Coaches removes inquiries, collections, charge-off bankruptcies, and repossessions. Don't forget to visit gccreditcoaches.com. Does your house look like and have you been considering remodeling your home for some time now? Well, if you love real estate like I do and appreciate the attention to detail in the craftsmanship required to build a remodel or a gorgeous home, then I got the perfect company for you. Guys, I highly recommend Design Zone Remodeling. They are a stellar company that will turn your outdated home into your own personal sanctuary. They specialize in bathroom remodels, kitchen remodels, and full house remodels. Design Zone Remodeling has a reputation for excellent workmanship, competitive fees, and being able to offer a wide range of services and deliver the outstanding results to their clients. I use Design Zone Remodeling on my personal properties. Give Design Zone Remodeling a call today at 725-223-0871 or visit their website at designzoneremodeling.com to request a free consultation today. All right, what's up, everybody? Another day in Las Vegas. That's right. So today we're going to be talking about Airbnb, how it actually has affected the Las Vegas housing market. And I've noticed a lot of these Airbnbs, a lot of them are starting to take a lot of L's right now, all right, which is kind of crazy, and how this is actually going to affect our market and you know what's going to happen. So today we got a very special guest. We brought him on before. You guys know who this guy is, Brian Lebo. You guys probably seen him on YouTube. He provides a lot of great information. So this is the only guy that has the real insight when it comes to Airbnb. So I want to go ahead and bring you on. How's everything going, my bud?
Fantastic.
Well,
happy to be in Chet's house.
You know, I do appreciate you coming on the show. And man, you a handsome ass dude, man. I'm looking at this screen right here with the lighting and everything. You're just chilling. I love that.
It's the mood lighting.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, it must be the lighting.
I don't know what it is, but just the over lighting and everything. Matter of fact, we got to change some things with the studio here because the lighting is not that great. So I'm about to order some lighting. We're going to change some things up. But I wanted to bring you on the show today because we were at a event. I don't want to say it's an event, but it was a class, right, with Blue Heron.
Yeah.
Right. So it was called Blue Heron University, correct?
Yeah. What did you think about it, by the way?
Well, that's what I wanted to get to. I thought it was, something really cool. That one thing I've noticed is a lot of builders are now starting to realize that, you know what, maybe we need to start working with real estate agents and really educating real estate agents with their product
And I think, you know what, this is the first company to do it, and I think this is a great idea, right? At the end of the day, it's a win-win situation all the way around. What do you think about it?
I actually love the idea. I mean, I think that a lot of builders could benefit from this, at varying levels. Obviously, Blue Heron's the pinnacle when it comes to our market as far as homes, being a luxury-derived company. A lot of agents don't really actually have the ability to really understand the product to relate to their clients. So, just from even the verbiage standpoint, understanding the names of certain design aspects.
Yeah.
So I think it was a really, really wonderful class and an opportunity for everyone to kind of get a behind the scenes look at the company, which effectively that's what you're selling them as a company, as a product, when you're actually selling their homes.
Yeah.
So I think it behooves them to educate us as to selling the project, and it behooves us to actually learn a little bit more about the design element, the construction element. So it was a great experience, and I've actually stayed in touch with them very closely. And, I had a few suggestions for them that I think they're actually going to implement in their forthcoming.
Did you get a listing yet?
Well,
I think everybody there is trying to get a listing right now.
yeah, well, not so much on the listing part, but if you do check out last night, they did allow me to shoot VM1. So,
Which is dope.
yeah, they only let Ennis, Curie, and then the producer Michael. There's only 3 people that I found that they ever let shoot the house.
Yes.
So they let me shoot that. That was brutal. It was an 11-hour shoot.
That's dope.
11 hours, but the video came out awesome.
You know what's crazy is it seems like the videos that you do, I kind of get ahead of you on this one.
You beat me on every
Yeah,
one.
but on this one, you got me. The thing about it is I've been really, really busy. So I haven't had the time to upload videos for some time. So a lot of you guys have been sending me out some emails and DMing me. We're like, where are all the videos? Guys, I'm very busy, so I do apologize. So starting next week, I'm going to go back out. I'm going to start doing video home tours again. So stay tuned. I do apologize. It's crazy. It's you ever sit at home and you watch YouTube videos and there's a certain channel that you watch, and if they don't upload the channel, you're like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, it's just stagnant for a while.
Yeah, you're like, what's going on? So I'm kind of going through that stage right now because, obviously I got to run a business too as well. And, that's our primary goal, is to run the business, not to make money off of YouTube, right? But it's a part of our business, but we've just been so busy.
Yeah, you got to do like NBC and just start showing reruns. Go back to the archive for 2 years, and then rebrand it as a classic hit. Right?
Oh, that's a good idea, actually.
Yeah, there's some free content for you.
Yeah. So, what's going on around Las Vegas? I want to get your perspective as a licensed real estate agent out here. What's going on with your buyers and your sellers?
I mean, it's just such a bipolar, fragmented market right now. I mean, very, very interesting. I mean, on my last update video that I put out about a week ago, I kind of tried to explain the fact that sales are down 40%, right?
Okay.
And in any normal time, if we said that sales were down 40%, clearly it's a buyer's market.
Yeah.
But then the median price went up $4,000, and the median price has gone up every single month this year except for 2 months.
Yeah.
So technically, if we stay stagnant right now at the median price, we'll end the year up 7% over last year. So now if I told you that our market's up 7% over last year, you would say, wow, that's a pretty solid market. It must be a seller's market.
Yeah.
So it's neither of the two. I don't know what you think. I don't think it's a seller's market, and I don't think it's a buyer's market. A lot of it's predicated on area, price range.
Yes.
That's something that, I always try to disclose, is that, and I even have a segment that I kind of invented about, I think, coming out of the pandemic, where it's production by price range. So I call it market saturation by price range.
Yeah.
Because obviously if you're a entry-level buyer buying a $300,000 home, your experience is going to be substantially different than someone buying a $750,000 home.
Would you say it would be a little bit harder in today's market, the lower on the price point that you go?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think when I was doing it, I was starting off with homes under $250,000.
Can you even find a home at $250,000?
I had to stop doing it because we got down to 20 homes. Literally, there was 20
it doesn't even
homes
make
on the
any
market.
sense. Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
all right, we got to dump this metric
Yeah.
because it's pointless. But yeah, I mean, there's a substantial difference. I mean, I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but your saturation level is 50, 60% on the lower end, whereas you drop down to 27% when you're up in the $700,000 price range. So again, your experience is going to be wildly different.
Yeah.
On the same hand, if you're looking for a $700,000 home in Summerlin, that's damn near the price of entry.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in North Las Vegas or East Las Vegas, there's going to be a lot less competition for that $700,000 home. So I try to break it down in that kind of a situation so that it's more relatable to the actual end user who's watching the video, because what do you care what $2 million homes are selling like if you're looking to purchase a $400,000 home?
Yeah.
And the truth is, everyone wants a blanket answer. And the truth is
you can't do that.
It's nuance. And that's why I always try to explain to people is like, I can give you an answer, but if you want an intelligent answer that actually relates to your particular situation, it tends to be a lot more nuanced.
Yeah. So what it really comes down to is what's your price point, where you want to be.
Where's your price point? And again, where do you want to be?
Yeah.
What area? Because, again, years ago, when I was working a lot more on the lower end, you're doing a lot of VA loans, right?
Yeah.
And, if you're in Summerlin or the good parts of Green Valley and you got a VA buyer, I mean, depending on the market, I mean, good luck. No one's going to give you the time of day sometimes. Whereas if you're in North Las Vegas, where you're closer to the base, you got a lot of active military, you got a lot of veterans, and it's just a different vibe up there. So a lot of times they'll bend over backwards to accommodate someone with a VA loan. Whereas the more affluent areas, a lot of times it's like, all I care about is the money. Just what's the best offer? It's all business.
Yeah.
So again, it's going to relate very differently depending on price range and area.
Do you think the feds are going to raise rates this coming month?
Well, I mean, you saw in the last couple of days, I mean, we went from them saying, look, we're going to hit the pause button, but we might do one more before we start lowering next year. Now they're saying, well, we're not seeing the economic slowdown that we had hoped for.
Mm-hmm.
So, good luck, right? And pretty much everything we've seen these last 3 years, we can agree that sometimes there's just no predicting. I mean, some of this behavior is unprecedented.
Now, where rates are currently at right now, how is that affecting the marketplace? What are you seeing with that?
Well, I think in some segments it has some effect, and in some segments it has a massive effect, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know multiple people that are close to me that want to purchase a home, but $450,000 entry-level home in Summerlin, okay? That was $2,400 a year and a half ago. That same payment now is going to be $3,300.
Can you still get a home in Summerlin for $450,000?
Actually, yeah. There's a few that have been down around $420,000.
Yeah, but they were built in like the 2000s and 2019, the 90s, right, or something.
Well, in Summerlin, I specialize in Summerlin, right?
Yeah.
But you got to think, since I would say about 2004,
okay,
that was the end of your 2-3 single story, 1,200 square foot, like KB home, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in Vegas for 31 years. And I mean, I remember one of my buddies back in 99 buying one of the first homes in Southern Highlands, KB home, 1,200 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage, $99,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we stopped building that product about 20 years ago. So the reality is that your more affordable homes that do exist in Summerlin are those homes that were built prior to, say, 2003, 2004, that are also smaller. But I mean, that's a dead product. I mean, I don't think we'll ever really see 1,200 square foot single story homes on a normal lot.
Well, I think in today's market, it wouldn't make any sense for a builder to build something that small.
No.
That's why, I think most of the stuff that they're building now that I see is about 2,300 square feet and up, because it's more cost effective, right? They make more money that way. But what's the median price point right now in Summerlin you're seeing?
Off the top of my head for this one, I don't know. The weird thing about Summerlin compared to the Las Vegas market is, whereas in Vegas, you might go up $2, $3, $4, $5,000 a month, but it's a lot more of a linear progression where you can, there's not wild movement. Whereas in Summerlin, because there's only, let's say, 200 or so sales on a monthly basis, the problem there is you can have a median jump $20,000 in 1 month, up, down $19,000. They're pretty wild swings just because you have a small amount.
Oh, it's that volatile.
Massive volatile change.
Oh,
just because, when you're looking at the median, it's not the same as a mean or an average.
Yes. Yeah.
So you're going to be much more subject to the amount of homes sold. So it fluctuates tremendously.
Okay,
but
so let me ask you this: at $350,000, can I buy a home in Summerlin right now?
No.
3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 2-car garage.
No. You're going to have to about 425 is where you're going to really start entering the market.
But you're not going to be in a new community. It's going to be outdated.
It's going to be built most likely in anywhere from 1992 to most likely it's going to stop around 99. You're going to be in North Summerlin.
You're probably going to have to do some updates.
Guaranteed. I mean, I hope you like rose-colored 12-inch tile. And
hey, it's coming back.
Is it?
I don't know.
When I see it at your place, then I'll believe it. But, yeah.
So, you did a video regarding Airbnb.
Yeah.
And you did a lot of research on this. I have no clue what's going on with this Airbnb. I have clients contact me all the time. You just tighten that up right there so it doesn't slide down. So, I have clients will contact me and they'll say, hey, I want to do Airbnb. And I know a little bit about it. Now, I personally wouldn't get into Airbnb myself because I feel like the guidelines changes on a consistent basis. Like you can never really have your thumb on the pulse. And by investing, money into something like this, for me, it's just not a safe play. Okay. Can you explain to the audience, kind of give us a rundown with Airbnb? What is really Airbnb?
So I'm with you there. I mean, personally, I was looking to get a place in San Diego. And, of course, my initial thought, just like most buyers, most consumers out there, I'm only going to be here for so many days a year.
Yeah.
So how can I actually recapture some revenue to offset, my debt service, right?
Yeah.
And the first fear that popped into my head, which actually I think is rational, was I'm like, man, in the beach cities in San Diego, a lot of those properties are rental properties, Airbnb, VRBO. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what if at some point in time, and with my luck, it would be right after I purchase, but what if they decide to change regulation and they kill it? Then all of a sudden it's going to be everyone and myself trying to exit out of this market at the same time. And I mean,
and that's a free fall
in any investment. I don't care if it's crypto, if it's stock. All that matters is when you need the money, right? I've learned that years ago. Yes. All that matters is when you need the money. And typically when you need the money is the same time that everyone else needs money too. Yeah. And then you're taking it. So when it comes to Airbnb, I actually had a client going back probably 12, 13 years ago, way before, back when it was like VRBO. I don't think Airbnb even had really been prominently known. Yeah. But he was picking up properties and doing short-term rentals and he was killing it, but it was very unknown. He had another company where he could process credit cards. So for him, I mean, it was just inherent and he was killing it. And then shortly thereafter, that became the advent of Airbnb, right?
Yeah.
And initially Airbnb was designed to kind of monetize and subsidize your home. But originally it was designed kind of like a bed and breakfast where, maybe mom's a little bit tight on money and she just wants to go ahead and rent out the casita or a spare bedroom and just bring in some cash flow passively without having to set up an entire business like a bed and breakfast. So, I mean, it made sense in that capacity. Obviously, it really took flight, pandemic era when everyone was kind of fleeing and going different directions. But then it also started to make sense from an investment standpoint. And then it made a lot of sense if you wanted a second home, which was, my desire.
Yeah.
Because I'm only going to be there, 1 week every other month. Might as well monetize it. So the problem is, just like most things in life, when everyone is doing it, game's up. So I don't care if that was .com, stock market. I don't care if it's crypto. When everyone has a foot in the door somehow, it's probably time to get out. So the problem with the Airbnb situation was the fact that every market became saturated. Everyone started buying properties and trying to Airbnb and rent them out. So you have to think, economies of scale to some degree, right? As this phenomenon grew, so do the problems, so do the attention. And so while this became massive on these platforms and became very profitable, it also drew a lot more attention. And then the problem there becomes is, while you may be discerning of who you rent the property to, this person's not. So, I mean, if you're in Las Vegas, I mean, it's a party town. So if you're going to rent to a bunch of 22 and 23-year-olds, during spring break, what do you think they're going to do?
Yeah.
Right. They're going to be partying, and your neighbors are not going to appreciate it. Whereas if you're renting to a family that, you know, they're in their 50s and 60s and have 3 kids, they're probably not going to be making too much of a ruckus other than maybe the pool in the backyard. So the problem is we went from what became like a revolutionary idea and a concept, and I think it just really kind of got oversaturated to the point that you had not just people who were looking to monetize their home, but then you had people specifically purchasing, and then you had arbitrage. So, I mean, you had people who, I personally know some people who like Palms. That's zoned resort corridor, so you can do whatever you want. So what they started doing is instead of purchasing these units, they just rented them, and effectively it's like a sublease. So they rent a unit for $1,200 a month, and then they Airbnb it for $3,000 a month. I mean, it's not a bad gig. But the point is that at some point down the road, everything becomes perverted to a degree, right?
Yeah.
Like Facebook. That was great to reconnect with your
now
friends.
Nobody really cares about Facebook.
Well, because, you know, look, it was fun when it was like, oh, I haven't seen Mike since college. That's awesome. Like, what's he up to? What's he doing?
Yeah.
But then when your uncle's new wife is posting propaganda and crazy stuff, you know, it just went too far. So where we're at now with Airbnb is this. I mean, at least in Las Vegas, similar to New York, it's dead.
Yeah.
Airbnb, like, we can just call it in right now. It's on life support. It is dying.
How many Airbnbs are out there right now?
I think in Las Vegas, it was rumored there was about 10,000 Airbnbs. I mean, they're almost all illegal. So the laws kind of vacillated, right? I mean, from the beginning, it kind of was what it was. Everyone just did it on their own. Then they came up with some wonky licensing where Henderson was a little bit more liberal. Las Vegas was very vague, if you will.
Yeah.
But clearly, you can't be in an HOA, which means all of the best areas, master plan communities, are off the table. And then with Henderson, there was restrictions on the proximity.
So the restrictions on the HOA, right, for the Airbnb has nothing to do with the city. It's just with the HOA along with their bylaws. Because I've noticed a lot of these HOAs, if you read the HOA resale package, they don't allow month to month.
Right.
The minimum is typically 1 year. Every once in a while, I'll see 6 months. But there are some HOAs out there, and I actually bought one of these condos over here on Seven Hills where you can actually go month to month.
Sure.
Right. So it's a case by case, but I think the regulations came from the HOA for the Airbnbs, right? Not directly from the city.
Well, yeah, the city prohibited HOAs. And, and again, it kind of goes back to, I mean, all of Summerlin. So 22,500 acres, it's a minimum 1 year lease.
Yeah.
How are you going to Airbnb with a
exactly?
No one's looking for a 1 year Airbnb. You know, I mean, well, I'm sure someone is, but again, it defeats the purpose, and it's not allowed. And a lot of them, like, it's not just a 1 year; they strictly prohibit in the bylaws.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem is if you have to get a license, the city's not going to give you a license where it's explicitly prohibited.
Yeah.
So effectively, that's what I'm saying. Like, every master plan community is off limits. And then, I mean, you and I both know there's a handful of neighborhoods that are really, really great and wonderful that don't have any HOAs whatsoever. It's very, very rare in the Las Vegas area. So it really restricted where you could purchase and operate an Airbnb. And especially in Henderson, I was selling a property right when all this was happening. And I mean, it was immediately... I immediately sold it, and I had 5 people that wanted to run an Airbnb because the problem is it was a nice neighborhood. There was no HOA. There were no rules. But again, I think it's like you have to be within like 1,000 yards of another one.
Yeah.
So the problem is that whole neighborhood's done in like
it's saturated.
Yeah. So many of the areas were saturated, and then when it came to the licensing, there was hoops to go through. It was, I want to say it was like $2,000 initially, and at the time, it was like, okay, do I apply and wait forever and spend the money to become licensed, or do I just run the program and roll the dice? And what was happening was the majority, 99% of Airbnbs were run illegally because people just said, you know what, I'll just take the fine if they catch me. And there was one woman, she was in the Review Journal. She was fined like $109,000.
Would she make like $1 million?
Exactly, right. I doubt that much.
Yeah.
But, you know, they made an example out of her.
Oh, crap.
But, you know, as they started cracking down, it got a little bit tenuous.
Yeah.
So basically it's been going back and forth with the legislative rules, but basically what ended up happening is they ended up coming up with a law against Airbnbs that was more of a government overreach. Clearly they wanted to just destroy it. So, you know, you had to live in the property and then you could rent one room. Then there was restrictions where no outdoor speaker of any kind. So you can't have a Bluetooth speaker in the backyard.
Yeah.
That was prohibited.
Noise. There's
noise.
a certain...
Well, yeah, the speakers, there was like nothing after 10 o'clock. You couldn't be out back past 10 o'clock. You couldn't use it for any events. So if you wanted to have a wedding or any kind of a celebration, a quinceañera, nope.
So how do you regulate and control your tenants through Airbnb with all these regulations and guidelines? I mean,
well, I mean that's the problem is how can you be responsible?
Yeah.
But the whole point was that you're supposed to be living there. That's
okay.
So
monitoring everything.
You know, it's kind of like some of the gun laws where it's like, well, okay, but if the guy's willing to commit a mass murder, do you think he's worried about the charges for the gun laws?
Yeah.
Like, he still was able to pull it off. I don't think he's worried about the gun charge over the murder charges. So it was a lot of nonsensical stuff. What ended up happening is a coalition came together. They challenged and appealed because it turns out that it's a constitutional violation to prohibit like any kind of events or celebrations or anything of that note. And some of the rules that they had instituted into the law were very overreaching. And the judge even said some of them are just vague. Like you said, okay, who's going to be in charge of this? One of the things that was crazy was that, like you just said, how are you supposed to regulate this? Who's regulating it? Well, whatever department they instituted, as part of you getting your license, they can show up at any time unannounced and basically check out the property. Well, no, they can inspect the property.
Yeah.
But you know, even as a landlord, we still have to give 24-hour notice. You can't just show up unexpectedly and demand access to a property. That's like Gestapo style. So basically, this judge struck everything down. So now it's going to the Nevada Supreme Court, and we'll see what they come up with. And it really is a pretty large debate. And I mean, I can see both sides of the table, right? On one hand, look, do you want to live next door to an Airbnb? I sure as hell don't. I don't. But I also live in an HOA. That prohibits it. And that's why I pay for the HOA. That's why I choose to live there. Whereas if you don't want rules, you don't want those regulations, and you don't want people telling you what to do with your house, then go live in a multitude of areas that allow that type of lifestyle. But if you're the type of person that wants to do whatever you want with your land, shouldn't you be able to rent your property to whomever you want to, as long as they're not committing crimes?
It's fee simple state, bundles of rights. You should have that right to control, right to possess, and to do the things that you want to do.
So we have this dichotomy, right, where I should be able to do what I want with my home. And then you have people saying, well, this is also unfair because now you have So I did a video where I kind of explained one of the biggest problems with corporations purchasing homes. And I kind of did it as a tier system, right? Where you and I, we want to go purchase a home to live in. Clearly we have a budget. We can't exhaust our budget. And as a normal person, we're going to go get a mortgage. We're subject to interest rates of wherever they are. But again, we can only afford what we can afford. Now, as an investor, if the cap rate is generous, I can afford to pay more money because the income is going to offset the debt service. And if all that matters is if it makes dollars, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
As an investment, there shouldn't be emotion. It's just a question of whether this pencils out. And there you go. So investors sometimes can afford to pay more than an owner-occupied individual. Now, when you go to Airbnb, there's more income to be generated, which means that investor can pay even more money for the property. Then when you go to corporations, you start talking Blackstone. I mean, their money's free.
I know they're borrowing it for so cheap. They basically control the banks.
So when you effectively have a 0% interest loan, your debt service is nothing, bro. I can afford to pay a hell of a lot more than you as an investor because as an investor, you know, right now you're getting an 8.5% mortgage on an investment property. Blackstone comes in and goes, yeah, mine's 0%.
Well, you shouldn't be buying an investment property at 8% interest rate.
Yeah, I don't know.
Nothing is going to exactly.
Yeah. Maybe in the Rust Belt somewhere, but again, you know, that's the issue is now this is where the politics come into play, and so. I mean, I don't want to get too much into the politics side of it. Really, really hate that. But that's where the Democrat side of it comes into play, where their position is trying to, you know, champion the disenfranchised at the bottom end and have affordable housing, et cetera, et cetera. Their argument, going back to what I just explained, was that by allowing these large scale investors who can capitalize on such large amounts of income, they are disenfranchising owner-occupied individuals who, one, can't write an offer that competes, and they can't afford the payment because the prices have gone up. So it's a very manipulated opinion that if you kill Airbnb, that will keep, you know, median prices at bay. I mean, I think it's certainly one simplistic way of looking at it, but it's incredibly simple. I mean, there's so much more to it than that. And if that's the case, then we really should really look into corporate America purchasing homes. If that's truly what your argument is, I want to see some of these politicians go after Blackstone, you know, invitation.
That's not going to happen.
Well, of course, because that's where they're getting some money from.
Yeah.
But again, if you're really looking out for the people, then look out for the people. And I think that your Airbnb investors are, you know, it's a drop in the bucket considering the overall problem. But it's going to be a very interesting situation because here in Las Vegas, you know, we had those 10,000 properties, and depending on when you purchased it, you may have the ability to just go ahead and convert it into a typical rental property, and it'll still pencil out. I mean, you know, if you purchased the house 3-4 years ago, you know, you're not going to get the same income generated that you did before.
The type of returns,
but you don't have to dump the property either. Now, New York is a different situation. Like, that's a major problem.
Yeah, like I was reading an article where they just passed where they got rid of the Airbnbs, and they went from like 2,500 Airbnbs now to like almost like 40,000 people are just trying to get rid of it now because they can't pay the mortgage.
I think it was like 29,000 Airbnbs just dropped down to like 2,000.
Is that what it was?
Yeah. And so, you know, in a city like New York, you know, there's still small numbers. So like, let's not get too crazy.
Yeah.
But the problem is, you know, it's a major problem. And here's the thing too, is like, we're supposed to be looking out, the part of this is looking out for consumers. But how can you make that argument? Now, the problem is now that there's less demand, hotel room rates in New York City just raised because there's all those 25,000 people that would have booked an Airbnb are now forced to use hotels. Supply and demand.
You think it's the lobbyists?
I don't necessarily think that it's hotel lobbyists in this town. I think a lot of that had to do with, I mean, come on. The strip runs it.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I would figure, right? Because it's like, I didn't think they even wanted that. Why would you even bring that here?
Well, here, come on, it's the strip.
Yeah.
Like, they don't want any competition. So they're going to eradicate their competition, and we all know where the money comes from. So, I mean, I can't hate the game. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
In New York City, I think that has a lot more to do with politics. That has to do with politics. Again, that's a very blue area, and one of their big talking points is affordable housing, you know, anti this, anti that, and that's a major agenda focus. And their argument is by eradicating all these Airbnbs, that'll keep prices down, that'll keep rental prices down. Because again, what are you going to do with all of these 25,000 units that are worthless now? So clearly, they're either going to sell them or they're going to rent them on a long-term basis. So if 25,000 units now come onto the market in New York City as rental properties, clearly those rental rates are going to be affected by such amount of supply.
Then your rental rates are probably going to go down.
Right.
But then as an Airbnb, if you're an owner, you have a mortgage payment, you're going to be competing against the next guy, just trying to get somebody in there to absorb some of that cost.
Right.
Then you may be in a situation where if you do have equity, now it's time to get rid of it. Let me exit out. But then you probably have another 4,000 people trying to do the same thing.
And that was my San Diego connection.
Yes. Okay.
Because, you know, anytime you make any decision in any aspect of your life, right, you should take time to reflect and decide, am I making a sound decision or is this ego driven? Have I thought of every consequence? You know, like I told my daughter, like the only time I'll ever be disappointed with something that you do is if you were blindsided by a potential outcome. If you never saw that coming, it shows that you didn't take the time to consider that this could bite you in the ass. I mean, look, no one's perfect. We've all been blindsided. But if you take the time to consider every possible outcome and mitigate your risk, you're always going to wind up in a much better situation than if you're impetuous and just do something.
So when it comes to real estate, you should always have some sort of exit strategy.
And when did you start the business?
About 13 years ago.
Okay. So you missed out on the crazy times.
Yes, I literally came in 2009.
Yeah, so I mean, you came in at the worst time.
Yeah. We had 18,000 properties on the market.
But the beauty is that you never had the ability to lose your ass.
Yes. But here's the thing: as I was coming in, all these agents were going out, and they were like, as I'm walking through, they're like, "What are you getting into the business for?"
And you're like, "This is great.
I know,
man. I can make great. 5 G's a month."
But the crazy thing about it was, I was able to learn from every other agent, because I remember during that time, I was literally going to buy a home. I couldn't buy a home because I literally was over here at Seven Hills looking at a 2-bedroom condo at that time. And it was like, I think it was like a 2-bedroom or maybe a 1-bedroom. And it was like $300,000. And I was like, I cannot make this payment. Right. And literally there was probably like 27 business cards. I looked at that and I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to own a property. But that was the best thing ever, right, because the market literally just tanked. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to get into real estate. But one thing I've noticed that during that time period, when times are good, every real estate agent was driving a freaking Hummer. Yep. I was like, yo, this is crazy.
I literally would need to write a screenplay. That's one of the back.
Did you have one?
I want to write a screenplay because some of the stuff, some of the true stories are so sensationalized that people would probably say that that's some bullshit. You know what I mean? But I mean, we could literally do a Wolf of Wall Street boiler room. Like
we should.
The real stories are just stranger than fiction. Yeah. But you know, when you're talking about the concept of a backup plan, you know, that was a lot. You know, look, when I started in the business, I was in my mid-20s, and you know, I mean, think where you were in your mid-20s versus where you're at now. You've seen just the experience is something. And going through the recession was actually arguably the greatest experience that I've ever had of understanding how bad things can be. And people that you look up to and idolize are not infallible. Yeah. Like you said, I mean, there was agents that had so much more than me, and I watched them just get vaporized. And frankly, maybe if I had started 2 years earlier and had more money to invest, maybe I would have been exposed as well. I don't know. But one of the things that I thought was strange at the time, but a lot of times you get caught up, especially when you're younger, you know, you don't have that moral constitution to just say, no, F that. Like, it's not for me, right? Yeah. Like, you went to parties and went to events in your 20s that now you're like, I know I don't even like that. Like, nope.
You're like calculating, okay, I got to get up tomorrow. I got 6 hours of sleep. You know, I'm just going to go home.
Like, it already sounds like a bad idea because you're thinking about it. Like,
exactly.
Like, I think about The Hangover on New Year's Day, and I'm like, do I want to spend New Year's on the sofa, or do I want to like get a couple projects done?
See, you're just getting older and wiser.
I'm done, bro. So anyways, one of the things that was going on during the boom was the fact that people have a very short memory span. So the truth is, the good times never last forever, and so do the bad times. But you also have to respect the fact that there will be change, and you have to be in a position to, if this market does pivot, where is my exposure and what is going to be my plan if and when the worst case scenario occurs. So one of the worst situations that I had, because like when I got into the business in 2003, you know, when you're going through the MLS and you're like, okay, this, you're filling in the blanks. One of them was short sale, yes or no. And I remember asking someone, and I'm like, hey, what's a short sale?
I don't know.
They're like, and I'm like,
that's never happened before. I don't know.
And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, they're like, well, I think it's when you can't afford to sell. I mean, shit, it's never going to happen. So don't even worry about it. Just put no. And I'm like, okay, all right. Cause no one could believe that a property would go down when everything was hyperinflating, right? So I had I had clients, and they were really lovely people. They were husband, wife, they were teachers, they were close to retirement, and they got with some agent who convinced them to purchase 2 Pulte homes in Summerlin. Well, the problem was, you know, this was almost close to peak pricing. And back then, Vegas was very, very, very different. And back then, rents were dirt cheap.
Yeah.
Dirt cheap. And so, I mean, imagine a brand new 2,000 square foot Pulte home renting for like $1,300, $1,400 a month, right? So
good luck finding that.
Right. But back then, that was kind of where the rents were. And so they had purchased 2 of these properties and they were losing $900 a month on each property.
But they were probably making some money through the equity position though, right?
That was the idea.
Okay.
The agent sold them on the fact that like, hey, look, I know you're losing $900 a month on each property, but we're going to rent this for 1 to 2 years, and then we're going to cash out big, and you'll basically get reimbursed for all of that negative cash flow. They were losing, think about it, their mortgage offset by the rent that they were getting, they were losing $900 on each property.
Dude, that's like what, 10,800 a year. Here's the thing: if you do the math, it probably does make sense, right? If you did it for 2 years, that's like 22,000. But if you made 100,000 when you sell it, that's a hell of a return. But that's a hell of a risk.
But that's the thing is, your bet is only one direction.
Yes.
Like you have no plan B. If that house, even if it just sits and doesn't appreciate, you're screwed in perpetuity, right?
Well, the plan B was mediation. Plan C was a short sale.
Which no one had heard of, right? Yeah. And so at the end of the day, that's exactly what happened. We ended up having to short sell our homes. But when you go back and look at it objectively, you're like, and that's part of the bigger picture that I would say. The bigger picture is this. Like we said, .com. I was around in 99 and people were buying any effing tech stock. And you would ask someone, oh, what does that company do? And they're like, I don't even know. But the
I'm
stock,
just doing it,
all people were looking at was the stock valuations, right? No one cared the product. Every stock was going through the roof. Cut to crypto.
Same thing.
Before crypto became a thing, in my entire life, I knew one currency trader. One guy that I went to school with, and he was in San Francisco doing international currency trading. And now all of a sudden everyone is a currency trader and an expert at it. So the problem is when everyone is doing something, that's a hit and a half in your ass to get out.
Yeah, go the opposite way.
Right.
Just like the NFTs, man. It came on quick and boom, it's out.
But I mean, again, and this is where like maturity and being old comes in. Even then,
older.
Thank you, man. You got a couple grays going on. But even at the time, I mean, I sounded like the grumpy old man, and I'm like, this doesn't even fundamentally make any goddamn sense. And they're like, well, it's no different than when the internet came on and people didn't believe you would buy a car on the internet. I'm like, but that car still had an inherent value. Yeah. But you're selling me on a 30-second YouTube clip of a guy dunking a basketball and celebrating, and that's worth that fundamentally doesn't make any sense. Yeah. It may not be a fungible, but it's completely fungible in the sense that I can watch this anywhere. I don't own that clip. I don't own the royalties to the clip. Yeah. But again, everyone was so hyped that logic no longer dictated. When it came to crypto, people didn't really understand that. No one really truly understood blockchain. But who cares? It was making money. Alan Greenspan, when they interviewed him and asked him about derivatives and a lot of the mortgage-backed securities, he said even he didn't understand some of these concepts. Yeah. But it didn't stop it from proliferating and making money. So the point I'm trying to make is that whenever there's opportunity to be making money and seemingly easy money, a lot of times logic is not going to dictate. And you have to fundamentally realize, I'm not against those things, but you have to realize that it's a game of hot potato. At some point, you're going to be left holding that hot potato.
So it almost sounds like it just comes down to psychologic, right?
Well, I think it...
As a human being, right? Once the herd goes this way, a lot of people are like, hey, this is fast money, this is quick money. Same thing with the not the short sales, but the Airbnb. They're like, hey, we're going to make quick money. But one thing I would always think about is, when the economy is good, people are moving and traveling and they're staying at places. But when that starts to slow down, do you think it's going to continue? Right? You see what I'm saying? People don't really think about those kind of things.
Well, and it's also a question, again, I guess the greater point that I'm trying to make is in any aspect of field, right? During the .com, there were legitimate stockbrokers who had been doing this for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Yeah. And then there was your dad who's in his bathrobe on E-Trade and he thinks he's a genius because everyone's making money and he just made some money. Yeah. He's not an investment strategist. he's on a good run and he's on a good thing.
Yeah.
Just like crypto. And back then, that was investment housing and now Airbnb. How many of these people that own Airbnbs owned one or two rental properties prior to that? Do you have the knowledge and experience of owning and maintaining? Very few people came from that world and went into this world. Everyone jumped into this world. And that's what happened is my clients that I gave you that story about, any true real investor would have never invested in that property because they would have ascertained what you and I just did. Well, wait a second. If this goes sideways, I've got exposure and then I'm stuck with negative cash flow for how long until this market recovers? No one expected the crash to be as poor as it was. But again, you're going to have ebbs and flows. And again, my point is, if you are a seasoned investor, no seasoned investor is going to go into an investment property with that level of negative cash flow on the hopes of a best case scenario. And that's where you run into problem. And a lot of that has to do here with these Airbnbs. Some people are seasoned. Some people have the capital. Some people can ride these waves out. And other people jumped on a bandwagon because they saw everyone else making money and they never considered what could happen. And that's, again, maybe I'm weak for having that fear in the San Diego market because it hasn't even happened. But if it does happen, then what?
How many Airbnbs right now would you say that are doing financing?
That are doing financing and
that actually have financing on the homes?
I mean, I would imagine
more than 50%.
Yeah, I would imagine the majority of them.
And what do you think? Do you think they're at least about 5% and higher interest rates?
I would say probably vacillating around that 4 to 5%. You know, I would say vacillating because a lot of those, you got to remember, all those were purchased when rates were really, really low.
Okay, so well, here's the thing: on a second home investment, you're probably at 5%. Let's just say 4.5%, best case scenario.
Right.
During that time period, home prices probably like 380. Okay, I guarantee it's not penciling out at this point with that interest rate. What you purchased it at 380, right? Because if you went to go, like, if you look at rentals right now, the average rental is probably about 1,800. Some of these rentals in certain locations are not moving. Right. So if they decided to put that property back on the rental market, it's probably not moving.
Right.
So they're probably hurting.
Well, part of the problem, and I personally went through this myself, is I had a property that, for various reasons, was mostly furnished. And then I ended up, it actually was kind of cool for my clients because anytime I had a client who had to move here prematurely or was in between properties, I'm like, yeah, dude, you just got to fill in a couple blanks. You know what I mean? You might need a bed, 2 beds, and you're good.
Yeah.
And I just had a turnstile going on there. And so that property went vacant a few months ago. And I'm like, all right, do I put a long-term tenant in there? But I mean, what am I going to do with all this furniture and the televisions? I don't need this crap. I'm like, well, maybe I should just invest a few more grand, finish this off, and then market it as like a corporate rental and something in.
What'd you pay for this property out of curiosity? I want to run the numbers on here real quick.
Okay, it's in Summerlin.
Okay, that's a good location.
And I paid $180,000 for it.
Would you steal this property? When did you buy it?
When I was like 5 years old.
Okay, so you stole it.
No, but I mean, yeah, I purchased that one.
So how much do you have into this home total?
I mean, I did a remodel. So, I mean, the remodel was done probably 7 years ago. So, I mean, really, I only have probably about $35,000 back in the property.
Okay, so what are you into it for? 210?
Yeah, let's just say that.
All cash?
No, at this point, there's a tiny bit of debt service. Like
how much? How much?
Less than $50,000.
What's your rate?
Yeah. That one, probably 4.25, I think.
Okay, so what's your mortgage right now?
That one, most of my properties I take a 30-year mortgage on, but then I amortize over 15 and make the 15-year payment, so that way they all are done in 15. I won't purchase a property if it requires 30 years to cash flow out. So I think the total debt service on that one's around $1,300.
Oh, that's not that bad. And what were you doing the Airbnb on that one?
I got someone in there for 60 days at $3,500 a month.
Okay.
And then I ended up, for obvious reasons, like it was a nightmare. Everything's done. It's over. But I've got someone in there now for $3,000 solid. But the difference is not only was it $3,500, but I had to pay all the utilities. And you know that AC bill is horrible.
Oh, and plus when you bought it, you probably got like a 12-SEER unit.
Oh, bro.
And it's 16 cents a kilowatt now, which has gone up about 30%.
Yeah, there's like no insulation in the house.
Oh, yeah.
Like it can't actually keep up with the Vegas like July and August.
Yeah.
You got to keep that thing at like 70 degrees overnight. Otherwise, it'll never cool down.
Oh, dude.
You're done during the day. It'll just run, and you're gonna sweat. It's the air conditioning unit is like the size of like a 1985 boombox, bro. It's like it's like a portable AC unit, dude. It's tiny.
Hey, so what kind of returns are you making a year on this thing?
I mean, it was solid because before, I mean, I really wasn't trying to like tremendously profit off of my clients. So I would rent it for like $2,000. It was more to help my clients. I know that they're not going to trash the property. Yeah. Obviously, you don't want, a property where you have high
not in this
turnover.
new case.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
But I mean, no, it was always a pretty solid property.
Yeah.
Because of the remodel, it was desirable. But even so, it was
not only that, you bought it for so low, dude.
Well, but here's, and I'm not going to talk too much about it, but one of the things for me, every starting investor wants a 3-2, right?
Yeah.
That's the preeminent rental property.
Well, rent's a lot easier than a 2-2.
Yeah, but what's better
desirable
is a 4 or 5.
Well, that's true too.
And here's, again, to each their own, everyone's got their style. Yeah. But what's worked for me tremendously is if you can rent to a family. The problem is when you have these little homes, you have this woman just got divorced and she needs a place to crash. Yeah. This guy just moved here from California. Well, she's probably going to find some guy and they're going to go get their place in a year. That dude, 50% chance that he's going to move back to California or keep moving and go to Arizona or Texas. Yeah. So I always had a decent amount of turnover. The properties that I own that have 4 or 5 bedrooms that I was able to rent to families in a family situation, husband, wife, whatever, cohabitation situation you got going on, and kids. Kids keep you poor, bro. So you're
kind of stuck.
If you're in your 40s and you've never owned a home and you have a wife that doesn't work and you got 2 or 3 kids, you can pay your bills, but you're probably in a situation where it's going to be very difficult to pay off your debt and buy a home, which means you're going to be renting forever.
Yeah.
And as a landlord, I never raise my tenants' rents because if you don't give me problems, my time was more valuable.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense by you to raise it another $100. That's $1,200 more a year. Then it goes vacant for like 1 month. You just lost that $1,200. It doesn't make any sense.
And dude, you get it. I subscribe to the same theory, but a lot of people just squeeze. They see, rents went up. Well, dude, I got to raise my rent 15% to keep up with the market. You and I have pretty substantial full-time jobs. The last thing I want to be dealing with is bullshit on the side, multiplied by other properties. So for me, if you're a good tenant and you don't give me a hard time, that's valuable to me. And just keep it moving, man. You're basically making my mortgage. I appreciate you. Treat the home like it's your home. Keep it moving. So a lot of my tenants have been with me 7 years, 8 years, 9 years.
Yeah.
And they can't leave because now the rent's so low, they're done.
So this one property that you had, you decided to do a Airbnb, correct?
Yeah.
Kind of walk me through that process doing it.
So technically you're not supposed to do this, right? Okay. But at the time going into it, I was like, okay, when you go to put something on Airbnb and VRBO, and one of my clients and really good friends operates a really successful one in Big Bear. Yeah. So, he and I discussed it because while I understand Airbnb and I've had clients for years, there's a very big difference between look, just because you watch basketball doesn't mean that you can go coach the Lakers. That's true. The same. So, we had a lot of discussions as far as strategy and what he did, and he had some brilliant ideas like, okay, just rent it to your buddy for a day so that way he can leave a review. If you're going to lose money, but lose the money to get the reviews because then people will feel comfortable knowing that people had stayed there and had good experiences. And then you'll get that money back by having it booked out 24/7. That's a cool idea. All right. I'm down with that loss leader.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, now that this law has passed, because there was all this talk of illegal Airbnbs and people, that's bullshit. There is not an illegal Airbnb being run through Airbnb or VRBO.
Yeah.
Part of the legislation states that the website has to verify your license. So what happens is when you complete at the very end, after you've gone through all the rigmarole.
Oh, you're literally typing everything in like 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah. You're like, okay.
License number.
Chat GPT, I need a good description for this property. Yeah. You get everything done. And then at the very end, they're like, chat, by the way, what's your license number? You're like, oh, damn. Well, by the way. So basically, if you don't upload your license for the Airbnb, you are cast into the 30-day zone.
Okay.
And they will not allow you to rent the property unless it's for a minimum 30-night stay. Clearly, that changes the scope of everything. So now you're down to maybe 1% of that market because now you're looking more like insurance claims or, people that are in distressed situations. Like the last person that rented it for 60 days, she was going through a divorce and had kids. Yeah. And so she just needed a place to crash until things settled down. I was hoping to get corporate rentals, opening a new business, this or this. You have poker players that are going to be here for 2-3 months at a time. Those are the ones that you kind of want to capture, and then you have no turnover. So the problem is now, yes, you are flagged. It's a 30-day rental. Mm-hmm. I mean, if everyone's renting for 30 days, I mean, you have a tiny population of prospective tenants, and now you have a glut of supply, everyone begging for 30 days. And there's no way to even backdoor any deals. So you can't, like, let's say you wanted to go to New York City and you see one that says 30 days and you contact them like, hey, what about 3 days next weekend? Okay. You can't even.
Okay, so what happens if you are in, a community, right, that doesn't have an HOA? Law says you at least got to do a 30-day rent. Okay, I'll do 30 days, but if they move out, I just credit you back the money. Couldn't you do that technically?
100%.
I'm not saying to do this, guys. Okay?
Well, I'll shoot that down in just a moment.
Yeah, please.
Part of the beauty, think about it this way. Like Doug DeMuro, I don't know if you watch him, big YouTuber. Now he got, $23 million because he came up with Cars and Bids. So it's like, I mean, it's a great
He's a
business.
goofy dude, but he's good at what he does. The way that he describes and captures that vehicle, you're mesmerized. He's good.
It's the quality of the content over the glossiness of the presentation.
Yes.
And I watched almost all of his videos, and dude, he's a goofy dude. Who's
I love that dude.
6'5" and sounds like Jay Leno, and half the time it looks like he's just did a couple lines of blow.
Or he just woke up, rolled out of bed with a t-shirt or some shorts.
Oh yeah, dude, t-shirt, short, cargo shorts. Yeah. But then he's sweating profusely, and he's like, yeah. So on this one, you're like, bro, Doug, slow down, dude, slow down. But I mean, look, part of it is that he's a personality. It's real, and people grab it. He's a car guy who
you can tell he loves cars.
And so, as a person who loves cars, you appreciate that. And his whole quirks and features is genius. Yes, because there's cars that I've sat in, I've driven. And he points out quirks and features that you would only know if you own that vehicle.
That's true.
And some of those quirks and features, you're like, that is awesome. So, anyways, kind of going back to, I don't remember where we were.
I don't know. We're just chatting it up.
We're just bullshitting.
It's a good conversation.
But going back to the Airbnb, and you wanted to rent it for 30 days, yada, yada, yada. So, the problem that you're going to find is this. Part of the beauty is, that's where the Cars and Bids came in, is I can go old school and use some shoe polish, put that on my back window, park the car in a parking lot on a busy street and pray that some dude calls me and pray that everything works out in my favor. Or I could put my car on Cars and Bids on eBay. Yeah, I could pay some fees, but I don't have to meet some dude and hope he has cash, verify this cashier's check. It's going to be a little bit more legitimate. Easier. So if any, you and I mean, look, dude, I will hustle and grind, but we're also in a place now where time becomes more valuable than sometimes the grind. I could do it, but the opportunity cost isn't worth it.
Exactly.
I'll pay for someone else to deal with all the BS and just give me what it's worth. So the problem is, the beauty of Airbnb and VRBO is you're dealing with people who have been somewhat verified. They have reviews. You can see this dude's 23 years old. His reviews are shady. No, I'm not doing it, right? And
so you're kind of discriminating to a certain extent.
Well, Airbnb has had numerous lawsuits for discrimination, racial discrimination, age discrimination. And again, I mean, look, whatever. I know we live in this PC world where you're supposed to pretend. Yeah. But look, I mean, if you owned an Airbnb, you don't want to rent that to a 22-year-old on a bachelor party.
Yeah.
You know what's going to happen. You want to rent to them, or do you want to rent to that family?
Yeah.
So But again, you're going to have legitimate cases of discrimination where people are like, I don't feel comfortable renting to 5 dudes on a bachelor party trip. I just don't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Is that discrimination? Yes. But it's understandable. And then there's going to be a situation where someone's surname is of a certain ethnicity and you're like, nah, I'm not renting to them. Those are 2 completely different scenarios in my opinion.
Yeah.
But either way, if you want to call both discrimination, go for it. So the problem that you're going to have is on Airbnb and VRBO, it's a little bit more curated. You have some protections in place. You have insurance. So you can make the person purchase insurance for the property. So if something is damaged, you have reimbursement, you have recourse. So it's a little bit more of a safer venue, but in lieu of that, you got to give up some of your revenue, right? Yeah. So there's pros and cons to it. Now, anyone can go rogue and go on Craigslist, right? I mean, we've all done the Craigslist game, and sometimes it works and sometimes you're never going to do it again. So the problem that they're having now in New York is like what you said. All right, how do I take care of this debt service? Now I have 0 revenue coming in. I have a prohibitive mortgage. I gotta find some way to do this. And again, now I've got a fully furnished apartment, fully furnished home. You mean I gotta just like garage sale this crap or put it in storage so I can rent it to a normal tenant? That blows. So what they've resorted to doing in New York City is risky. They're going on Craigslist. They're putting Facebook advertisements. And then there was a website that I hadn't even heard of, and they're going on there and advertising. So you can be resourceful and you can grind and you can do that. But now the problem becomes you're opening yourself up to tremendous problems.
Liability and all that.
Now, you don't know who the hell you're renting to. I mean, maybe you signed a lease agreement or maybe, it's through an email.
Next thing you know, they're squatting in your house, not even getting out.
Did you see the Los Angeles Times article?
Oh, which one?
540 days in that guy's house.
Oh, no, I didn't see this one.
Guys, I don't know where the camera. This camera. If you want a crazy batshit.
Camera right there.
If you want a batshit crazy story, that'll tell you everything that you need to know about the state of California. Look up the article. This guy, this poor guy. So this guy, I forget what he did. He was like an architect. He had a home. He invested and remodeled the whole home. He had an additional dwelling space that he converted into being, like a casita. And he decided to Airbnb it. All good. Well, he Airbnbs it to this one woman. She says, hey, I think I want to stay a little longer. He's all right, cool. We can work that out. Cool. Cancels the Airbnb. We want to stay. She goes, psych. I'm staying.
Oh, wow.
She refuses to leave. And he's like, all right, well, I'm just going to have to evict you. Well, she lawyers up. And you're like, how can you lawyer up? You're clearly squatting. Yeah. You are not paying rent. Well, he goes to Airbnb and Airbnb goes, hey, you killed the deal. Yeah. Once you kill the deal, that's on you.
Oh my God.
They remove themselves of all liability, which it is what it is. Then the attorneys get involved. They start fighting. She gets the code enforcement for the county to come out. Turns out it's not permitted. So they say, bro, we can't evict her because you don't even have a legal dwelling.
Oh my gosh.
Meanwhile, it's 8 feet from his kid's bedroom, and this chick squatting and being disruptive, and they gotta tiptoe around this woman who refuses to leave. At the time that the article was written, it had been 540 days that she's been living there rent free,
and she's using that money from rent to hire an attorney.
No, she's suing him. She wanted
what?
So he offered at one point. He offered to just say all right, I can't take the emotion. I'll just pay you to leave. And he offered to relocate her and do this and this and this. And then they got into it. And so now I think she wants over $100,000 to vacate the non-habitable dwelling.
Dude, career criminal.
And I'm like, bro, I'll tell you what. You pull that, you can live there, but you're not going to have any running water. You're not going to have any electricity. I will cut that out in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be living in Yoda's hut by the time I'm done with you. But anyways, so the problem that you run into is now, in New York City, if you resort to doing all this, illegal activity, if you will, the problem is now you have no legal protection either.
Yeah.
So now, you and I decide to go to New York for a weekend, and we rent someplace on Craigslist, and then we go, you know what? This is cool, man. Yeah, I think I'm going to do 6 months in New York City, see what it's like. Good luck. And who knows how long it's going to take to evict them. And then what? What, you're going to go and try to get an eviction because you did an illegal Airbnb? So that's the next debate that's going on, is how they're going to manage that aspect of it. So, there's a cause and there's always going to be an effect. And so that's where the story is really interesting, is you're going to have people that are going to skirt it. You're going to have people that are going to circumvent it. But then what kind of a blowback are you going to have? And then on the same hand, when you go through Airbnb, you can see 20 reviews and they're like, yeah, the place is great, but the Wi-Fi blows. You're like, all right, I still like the place, and we'll hotspot off the phone. Yeah. But if you're doing something off Craigslist, how do you know they even own the property? They have the right to lease it. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was a big scam during the foreclosure days.
There was a couple deals where we had a bunch of squatters doing a bunch of short sales. We had to do cash for keys. That was crazy. And I'm not going to say the name, but there was actually some agents that were actually took on some bank-owned properties. Some of them will, they did the short sales where the tenant had left or the owners had left, and the fucking agent actually lived in the home.
Oh, yeah.
Which is baffling to me. Like, I literally want to tell on you right now. So here's the thing. What's going on with New York? Okay. Could that possibly happen here where laws pass and say, hey, there's no more Airbnb here? Okay. We get a flood of, homes that these owners decide to list and put on the market. Do you think that could potentially happen out here? Do we have enough Airbnbs like that?
I would have thought that was possible if we had this conversation, say 3-4 months ago.
Yeah.
The fact that this has been happening. I mean, look, you may have had people that booked out 6 months prior, and I don't know. I can't talk about that aspect of what Airbnb and VRBO is doing for existing reservations that are now illegal properties. I don't know what they're doing to regulate that aspect of it. But short of people who have already pre-booked, you have to imagine, I mean, you're at a point where you have no revenue. Those homes should have already been on the market 2 months ago, 1 month ago. I really don't think that we're going to see an influx of Airbnb properties just flooding the market. I'm sure if we were to look into some of these properties a little bit closer, and I mean, next time, start looking at it. Like, was this an Airbnb? Is this their way of just getting out? I've seen a few former Airbnbs come on the market. But
I've noticed that too, because I had a friend of mine. She's an investor, and she had an Airbnb out in the Southwest. There was no HOAs. It was a pretty nice property, and she was just sick of it. She just got out because of the guidelines had changed so many times. Yeah. And she was like, you know what? We're just gonna move our Airbnb to a different state, and that's what she did.
Right.
And she's still prospering, but a lot of this stuff is kind of like negative. But here's on the flip side: if that did happen, right? We talked about absorption rate, right?
Yeah.
So if we have more properties on the market, that's good for you as a buyer, because there's just way too much buyers right now that are pretty much eating up all the properties.
Well, it's good. It's good all the way around. Yeah. So I've never heard anyone else articulate this concept the way that I kind of came up with it.
Yeah.
But again, having lived in Las Vegas for 31 years and seeing how the city has grown and evolved. Because, I mean, when I moved here in 92, from 92 to 2000, I can say that I can't remember any one of my friends' parents ever remodeling a home.
Yeah.
Because there was no point in remodeling. Why would you? You just move 5 miles in that direction, and they're building brand new homes.
Yeah.
And because they're far out, it was the same price as the home that you were selling in a desired neighborhood. So people who had a desire to remodel would just buy a brand new home. That's just what it was. Clearly now things are different. We have neighborhoods that have sustained, so a very different situation there. But what is really troubling and unique, I mean, look, I'm all for business, I'm all for investment, and I think it's a real tough conversation, because where do you draw the line? But think about this concept. What we're basically doing to America is we are kind of killing a little bit of the American dream, and it could be a lot of the American dream. We've never had a point in history where corporations owned our homes and then rented them back to us. And on the simplistic level, that's obvious.
Yeah.
But what you're missing is what we touched on earlier. We haven't built single-story, 3-bedroom homes in 20 years. Like, we stopped building them because, like you said, it doesn't pencil out, right? But those starter homes, that's how people start their lives, their investment. So think about it. I buy a home in 2000 is my little starter home. I meet her.
Mm-hmm.
We have 2 incomes. We're going to get that big old 2-story. I sell you the home and you're like, yo, this is the greatest place ever. And you live in that house for 5 years and then you go and move on to that bigger house and then you sell it to this dude. Well, the problem that we have is we have a product that we can't replicate because we won't replicate it.
Yeah.
And then when a corporation comes in and buys it and then rents it, that's a home that's never going to come back on the market in 5 years and in 5 years and in 5 years. So part of this reason we have affordability problems and affordable housing is because we have a product that we won't build.
Yeah.
And then every damn investor wants that same 3-2 product. So a great high propensity of those homes have been absorbed by investors. So the problem is it makes it increasingly more difficult for people to start their lives and start their investment careers owning a home, because where are they?
Now, with these 3 large hedge funds that are buying homes across the United States, I thought there was like some cities that were trying to pass some law where they couldn't buy homes.
I mean, I haven't seen any legislation passed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there might be some rhetorical proposed bills.
Yeah.
But the reality is I haven't heard of any that actually passed. Again, a lot of times they might be trying to, speak to their base and show good faith.
But it ain't going through.
But I don't really see
it's like,
that happening.
how do you go up against like 3 major banks, right?
Yeah, and again, like where do you draw the line? Like
Yeah.
you can only own 3 homes, you can only own 10 homes, you can only own 100 homes, and then what? So then you just come out with a subsidiary. So this corporation owns 10 homes, but then there's 100 subsidiaries underneath that LLC that each own 10 homes.
They'll just create LLCs,
Yeah,
which makes sense. They'll just play the game. There's always a way around it, basically.
Yeah. And like you said, banking. I mean,
Now, let me ask you this. Where do you see Las Vegas in the next 24 months?
24 months is an interesting timeline. I think we're going to have this similar market for quite some time, right? I would say the earliest that we're going to see a change will be sometime late spring, early summer, but God only knows. But I do think sometime in the next 24 months, we're going to have batshit crazy, hyper appreciating market again. I know it sounds crazy, but there's 2 factors.
Is that based upon rates going down or stabilizing to where we're at?
I think the precipice are going to be rates. So if we can agree that for almost 2 years, well, if we get to spring, that'll have been 2 years that rates have gone up to the point that a lot of buyers, especially entry-level buyers, just couldn't afford to or are unwilling to afford. Like I said, I've got 2 people in my life that are very close to me that want to buy but can't wrap their head around these payments.
Yeah.
And obviously, the Fed has something to do with that. Mortgage rates are tied to the 10-year Treasury yield.
Yep.
But what most people don't understand, and I did a whole video on it, if you really want to nerd out, but one of the major factors that not many people, other than economists and bankers, is what's called the mortgage spread. Are you familiar with the mortgage? No. So this is incredibly important. So the quick synopsis is this. When the Fed raises or lowers rates, that affects more consumer. So your car loans, your credit cards, that's a direct correlation there. What affects mortgage rates is a little more indirect. The 10-year Treasury yield, that is the direct correlation between the 10-year Treasury yield and mortgage rates.
Yeah.
From a historical perspective, mortgage rates are 1.72%, 172 basis points above their 10-year Treasury. So if you think if the Fed has rates at 4% and the 10-year Treasury yields at 4%, that means mortgage rates will be at 5.72%. Okay. That 172 basis points is what's called the yield or the mortgage spread. That's the mortgage spread, the spread between mortgage rates and the 10-year Treasury yield. Right now, that spread is about 300 basis points.
Oh, shit.
That's what people don't understand. So to keeping it simple, to come back to the norm, right? To bring parity back, rates have to drop at least 1.3% just to be at a normal mortgage spread, historically speaking. So even if the Fed doesn't do a damn thing, I think when I looked at rates 2 days ago, it was 7.74%.
Yeah.
So what? That brings us to 6.1%.
Mm-hmm.
So even if the feds don't do anything, rates should drop down to 6.1% from where they are right now, just to have a normal mortgage spread.
Okay.
That is huge. That's what people don't understand. When I said at some point rates are going to start coming down, it's because of the mortgage spread. I don't even care what the Fed does. Now, part of the reason the mortgage spread is so high is how do banks make money?
Well, they got to get that. So basically, it's like when you talk about what the feds will come out with the interest rate, the bank has to make a certain amount of money. They tack that on there, and that's what that spread you're talking about, right?
Well, think of it this way. If you are an institutional investor, you can buy government bonds, which typically don't pay shit, but you have zero risk.
Yeah.
Or you could buy mortgage-backed securities, which have a little bit more risk, but
higher
typically
yields.
not, but a higher yield. So if you're going to sell a mortgage, that mortgage has to be higher than the 10-year treasury. Otherwise, I'm just going to buy a government bond.
Bond, yeah.
No risk.
They got to make some money.
Right. Well, here's the problem. With everything that's been transpiring over the last year, is there going to be a huge housing crash?
So they want more of a spread.
They want a fucking spread. Well, think about it. Think about it this way. How do banks make money? They make money on the interest.
Yeah.
Well, if the bank's going to go through all this rigmarole and pay all this money to fund a loan, if they know that you're going to refinance that loan in 2 to 3 years when rates come back down, what's the point in making the loan to begin with? Because that whole note's going to be paid off in 2 to 3 years. So if I'm going to make that note, I'm getting my money up front. So that's why they want a bigger yield, a bigger mortgage spread, is because one,
that makes sense. They make more money.
I make my money up front because I know you're going to refinance this damn thing in 2 to 3 years. And then two,
then they're going to make
if the
money
market does crash,
yeah.
well, these mortgages are going to be worth a hell of a lot less money, like we learned in 2008. So what invariably will happen, again.
So why don't they do this? Keep it the high interest rates, but instead of 30 years, go to 40 years.
Oh my God. I know you're being facetious right now because I will get out of this and slap you silly, bro. My God, bro.
Hey, let's just go 40 years.
God.
Let's just change up this market. You know what? Let's take it to 50 years.
You know what? By the time we're dead, I believe that that's possible. Well, think about it. They got 10-year car loans now, bro.
That's what I'm saying.
And that arguably is even more stupid because depending on the car you buy, that thing might not be running too well in 10 years. At least your house still exists. But I mean, look, I'm a 15-year kind of guy.
Yeah.
Where, you know, and look, I mean, I'm sure you've had it. I mean, I've tried to talk my clients out. I've got clients that are 55 years old and they want a 30-year mortgage, and I'm like, I know what you do for a living, and your plan is basically to fail. At some point, you will not be able to afford to make your mortgage. So why are you doing? Scale this down. You don't need a house that big. Maybe not in this area.
Yeah.
Scale this down. And look, if you're 55, 70 still, you're up there. But at least if you can make it to 70, at least you're flush, bro. You're flush, and you'll be all right, dude. You'll be all right. But like 30, again, like a 30-year, your plan is to fail. The only way I can see a 40-year mortgage, which I can't see, is if you're like buying your first house at 20 years old or something. But even
if you're going in at a 40-year and if you only put down 3.5%, it's not as bad because you could still walk away. It's just kind of like you're renting. Right. If the market goes up, you're making money. If it goes down, hey, you know what? I'll play the game. We just do the short sale. Right. It's a lot easier to walk away. Right. But at least you have that cushion where it's a low enough payment where you can make that payment. But if you want to make that, interest payment, or that principal payment, you just put more down.
Well, here's what I'll predict.
Yeah.
Where America is going, housing is so unaffordable.
It really is.
And what American values are in huge peril is the way I'll put it. And I'm not trying to be the old guy who's just grumpy.
No, this is just real talk.
But you think about how things have been diluted, right? Like your grandma, my grandma, she lived in the same house for so many years, it's insane, right?
Yeah.
Back in great grandma, they bought a home when they were X amount. Mortgages were 10 years, maybe 15 years. You lived in that house. You paid off the house. You stayed in that bitch until you had to move in with your kids because you were too old to live alone.
Yeah.
And then it kept going. And then, you get to the 80s where financing becomes sexy, and then they start refinancing, and you have home equity lines of credit, and you start allowing people to use their homes as piggy banks and vehicles for financing, and you start getting into real treacherous territory. And now when you come into our generation and now the next generation, what's really frightening is the fact of no one gives a rat's ass anymore about the cost of goods and services per se. Every look at every 20-year-old. Every 20-year-old has $1,000 phone in their pocket. Every single one of them.
Oh, it's got to be more than that for these damn phones, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, I got the iPhone 15 and maxed out with the max. It was like $1,700, $1,600 for a phone, bro.
Bro, I could buy a dirt bike with that.
You could, but your dirt bike doesn't make you money, and my phone does.
That's
so
true.
I got to do some video stuff, right?
Yeah.
But the point is you go to T-Mobile and they go, hey, you can get the new iPhone 15 for $55 a month. And you're like, yeah, I can do $55 a month. Now, if you went to T-Mobile and they're like, hey, chat, dude, the new phone came out. You got to get it. It's $1,500. You're going to be like,
no, hell no.
Bro, I work at McDonald's.
Yeah.
You think I have $1,500 just flush? No. But that McDonald's employee has $40, $50 in their pocket. Yeah, I can do that. It's
for 30 years.
It's the monthly payment. We live in a monthly payment world. I mean, bro, Affirm. You've heard of Affirm?
Mm-hmm.
How the hell are you gonna buy a pair of shoes and finance those things?
That's crazy,
bro. Go on StockX.
You shouldn't even be buying
a
pair of shoes if you got to finance it. But you're right. We're in a nation in debt at this point, and it seems like everybody is okay to make payments. Like, and I'm guilty of that too. I've got like all these little shows. You know what I mean? Like, what is that? Like Hulu.
Yeah.
What is that? Netflix.
Yeah.
I don't even really watch it. My wife does, but all this stuff adds up.
$15 a month. And again, I don't care if your car payment's 3-4 G's a month. You're in a position where you make good money, and it's a ratio of But even so, even if you had a $2,000 car payment at your income level, the percentage is probably lower than a person who works at McDonald's paying $200 a month.
Yeah.
So what you said is correct. And what I'm getting at is the fact that all we care about is the monthly obligation, right?
Yeah.
So it stands to reason. And look, I will take the side of greed all day, every day. Banks will always find a way to make money. I don't care what you do. They will always find a way to make money because the banks are the ones that rule this freaking world. They own the politicians. So when we get to an impasse, right? Everyone says, well, prices can't keep going up. No one's going to be able to afford to live there. Oh, I'll bet your bottom dollar the banks will find a way. You think banks are going to go like, well, no one wants loans anymore. I guess we just need to fold up shop. No. What you're going to start seeing is you're going to see 40-year mortgages become the norm. At some point, the concept of a 30-year mortgage was probably insane to people.
It wasn't like that like 30, 40 years ago.
No, and now that's the norm.
Yeah.
So we're going to make the norm 40-year mortgages. At some point, we'll bring back interest-only loans. The banks will find a way to capitalize and make money, and the way to make money is to find a way to make monthly obligations more affordable. The fact that, like you said, at a certain point, now you're renting your house. The only benefit you have is that you're actually building equity.
Yeah.
If you happen to live in an area that builds equity. You buy a house in Alabama on a 40-year mortgage, guess what? 32 years from now, you still owe what the house is worth. You know what I mean? So, but I think that that's the direction that we're going to see ourselves going, and especially the proliferation of all these corporations buying all the affordable homes. Like I said, I mean, Vegas used to be a place that you move to as a blue-collar person. You can get a job in a casino and buy a brand new home and have a good life for your family. And you're starting to see increasingly more here in Vegas, at least, right? We never had multimillionaires fleeing California. It used to be, look, if I were making $1 million a year, I wouldn't be in Vegas. I would be in a beach community somewhere in California. Now those people are going, I don't want to live there. I'm going to Vegas. So when you look at that, I mean, that median income is rising because the people that are migrating here have more and more money, which is kind of bringing those values up more. Very, very different climate, very different situation. And so again, the only way to really solve affordable housing is either you figure out how to depress values by bringing interest rates to 18%, or you come up with financial instruments. And in my guess, I'm going to guess on greed and banks will come up with financial instruments to keep those coffers coming in.
So for an average person out there right now that makes $80,000 a year, household income.
Yeah.
Got kids. Got about $10,000 sitting on the sidelines. Today, they give you a call and say, Brian, I'm thinking about buying a home, but I'm just not too sure. I need your advice. What would be that one advice you give that person before I let you go?
I mean, honestly, I don't think I hate to say it, sorry for all the realtors out there, not trying to throw shade, but I think for a lot of people, and in that situation, it might not be the time for them to be purchasing. It just might not be, because they're in a price range that's so razor thin and so difficult. They're incredibly price sensitive to these interest rates. So maybe wait until those rates hit that 6%. But I know that we're closing because I hear the music wrapping you up. What is going to happen at some point is once rates break through 6%, you're going to have all the back pressure from 2 years come right to the forefront. I've already seen this happen 2 times before in my career. There's going to be a mass rush of buyers that have been sitting on the sidelines for 2 years. And overnight, we're going to go from slow to crazy. And real estate can be emotional. And when emotions get involved, sound and logic does dictate. We've already seen it so many times.
No appraisals, no inspections.
I'm telling you, in that 24-month period, I would be surprised if within 24 months, we don't have a podcast where you're like, bro, what's going on? Rates dropped to 5.5%. And now all of a sudden, look, we have 3,400 homes on the market. In a normal market, we sell 3,000 of them.
Yeah.
So if the market changes like that because rates hit 5.5%, we eviscerate that inventory in 2 seconds. The last time we had that market correction, we were sitting on like 16,000 homes in 2011. It took a little more time to burn through it, but that happened in April of 2012. That's very likely to occur in the next 24 months.
Now, if somebody wants to purchase a home, how do they get a hold of you? What is the best way?
702-257-LEBO. You can look me up on the internet, Brian Lebo, brian@lebogroup.com. Just Google me, Brian Lebo, and all the information's right there. And check out my YouTube channel. You know, Chat and I do very similar things, just in different ways. We both have respect for each other. Just a little bit of a different way of doing it. So check out the YouTube channel and see what you think.
Well, I do appreciate it, guys. I'm going to have a link in the description below. So if you guys haven't had a chance to subscribe to the channel, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Other than that, until next time, next week, Wednesday.